Hello again. I hope we're where we're supposed to be. You can let me know in the chat if you hear anything. Let me just type that. Is it running here? And hopefully it will be. As far as I could tell, it was all set up right. But I don't want to really get into it until I get some feedback from the chat, because crazy things happened last week. Anybody there in the chat? Okay, cool. Still don't know why it didn't work last week. So I'm never quite sure. But anyway, yeah, awesome. Okay, good to see everybody here, and we'll try to stall for a minute for everybody to show up. So far, earlier we had Billy Sunday here. Haven't seen him in a while. Chow as always with the links, and there's going to be a bunch of links today, just FYI. Let's see, Teddy, Good Servant, Dom, Professor, I guess, Red MAA. I always want to say MMA. I don't, it's just more familiar word. But anyway, Rachel Menifee and P. Atchen. I'm sure there will be more. You guys can greet them. But today we're going to do the Dead Sea Scrolls. And Proverbs 18:17 is an important verse to remember on topics like this, because as you know, it says the first person to speak always seems right until they're cross-examined. And so even if we really like what we're hearing, we have to cross-examine it. In this case, what I did was I watched this video and took some notes as it went along. And as you can see, this is it was uploaded on 2016, but if I go back to here, I think this actually said it started, it said in the title, 1997. Starts out with this other guy. I think these two guys are brothers or something. I don't know. Anyway, the name of the channel is Harry Hubbard, Denver Workshop, August of 1997. Amazing presentation. Everybody loves it in the comments, right? And so you have the link, and let's look at some of the things that they said. I obviously can't play it, so you'll just have to use your imagination or go watch it sometime. It's the first thing you will notice is being done in a very small room. Okay, when people clap or talk, you can tell it's just not a big room. All right. Thanks for that, Chow. And I don't know about you when you watch it, but spoiler alert, I get a used car salesman vibe from this. I know, 1977, it's not like or 1997, it's not like 77 or earlier where you did get poor quality video on tape or, and it was, you could expect low res then, but 97, not so much. It should have been better. So the low quality video in a small room with these smooth talking people, I doubt if true professionals who had really done their homework on this would present that way. And another thing is you'll notice it takes them at least an hour to get to the topic. It doesn't start out talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I don't know if that's just a clickbaity title on the part of the video uploader. But the thing is, it's a 2.5 hour presentation, and the first hour is not about the Dead Sea Scrolls, just to let you know. What it is about is, at first, coins, paper currency, stamps. It's all really interesting if it's true. I don't know if it's true. No evidence was presented. You can't zoom in very well on the things that he's holding up, little, laminated pages with, I thought I had one of them up here like this, where he's got some currency from allegedly around the world, and you just don't know where he got it, if the stories he's telling are true. You just don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But you can't go around saying, you got to watch this is awesome, until you do your due diligence and check the guy out, which is not as easy as it sounds. Um, but that's the important thing, is that no matter how interesting something is, if there's no real solid evidence, you got to be skeptical. It reminds me of the shows that were in the 70s, like In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, where they went searching all right, but they never really found anything. They would put this carrot and stick in front of you and say, oh, I discovered this, I discovered that, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for, and maybe next week, you know. They did get to some Bible claims, and we'll get into the fraud business here in a minute. But the first claim that they made was that I picked up on was that there was no evidence that Pontius Pilate existed. Okay, that was my first major red flag, not the first red flag, but so they said that Pontius Pilate never existed. This is Encyclopedia Britannica, certainly not biased towards the Bible or Christianity. It says Pontius Pilate, Latin name Marcus Pontius Pilatus or Pilatus, died after 36 AD. They use C because they don't like to say Anno Domini. Anyway, Roman prefect or governor of Judea from 26 to 36 under Emperor Tiberius, who presided at the trial of Jesus and gave the order for his crucifixion. As I've said before, this is something that even top scholar atheist Bart Ehrman acknowledges as one of the major proofs that Jesus existed, because of Pontius Pilate. And the other one is John the Baptist. But for these guys on the video to say that Pontius Pilate didn't exist, they are making a major claim that requires some really strong, vigorous examination. Okay? So we have this hostile witness, hostile because it's not in favor of Pilate existing, right? And yet it admits that he did. It doesn't have any bias toward him existing. So according to the traditional account of his life, Pilate was a Roman equestrian or knight of the Samnite clan of the Ponti, hence his name Pontius. He was appointed prefect of Judea through the intervention of Sejanus, a favorite of the Roman Emperor Tiberius, confirmed by an inscription from Caesarea in ancient Palestine. So there's no doubt that he existed. So when the guys in the video say Pilate doesn't exist, I have a major problem, and everybody else should have one too. And basically nothing in here contradicts what the Bible says, but I think it's an interesting little entry they have here. Protected by Sejanus, or however you pronounce his name, Pilate incurred the enmity or hostility of the Jews in Roman-occupied Palestine by insulting their religious sensibilities, as when he hung worship images of the emperor throughout Jerusalem, had coins bearing pagan religious symbols minted. Then Pilate was exposed to sharper criticism from certain Jews who may have capitalized on his vulnerability to attain a legal death sentence on Jesus. See John 19:12. And that's the thing, is when it says the phrase, you will not be a friend of Caesar, they're being very serious about him losing his job and possibly his life if he doesn't go along with them. So, yes, we'll get into more about the Dead Sea Scrolls in a minute, Neil, but the thing is that right now, I'm just taking things in the order they presented in the video, which, as I said, it didn't get to the Dead Sea Scrolls for an hour. But anyway, the first Bible claim they make is that Pilate didn't exist, and he absolutely did, and what is known about him is in line with what the Bible says. So, just to put that on the back burner, or a front burner. But another claim is that David and Solomon were also fictitious characters. But we have another hostile witness here. Science News. New finds suggest biblical kings David and Solomon actually existed. This is in 2014. 6 clay seals, we're talking about hard evidence here, 6 clay seals found at the archaeological site of the Khirbet, assumingly in Israel, offer evidence that supports the existence of biblical kings David and Solomon, says a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Blakely at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. So, I know that it doesn't look like much to go on for us, but when archaeologists, who again are hostile witnesses, find evidence for the Bible, it's pretty significant. Many modern scientists dismiss David and Solomon as mythological figures and believe no kingdom could have existed in the region at the time the Bible recounted their activities. The official clay seals, or bullae, unearthed by Dr. Blakely's team in a small village that existed from the 10th to 8th century BC, located in the northern part of Israel's Negev desert, provide evidence, hard scientific evidence, that some type of government activity was conducted there in that period. So when people assume evolution, and they assume primitiveness, and they assume that people didn't have tech that they had, it leads them astray. And these people in the video are no exception. But this and other archaeological discoveries prove them wrong, even the scientists wrong, let alone these presenters who I don't think are scientists. They were used to seal official correspondence in much the same way wax seals were used in later periods. The scientists describe it as a borderline area between the heartlands of Judah and Philistia. Philistines were the ancient arch enemies of Israel, and that's why the Romans named it Palestine after about the end of the 1st century, because it was named after the enemies of the conquered people. So they called it after the Philistines. That's why it's called Palestine. It has nothing to do with who was there first. And the Romans were occupying it all anyway. It was originally assumed to be a small Iron Age farmstead. However, the excavation of the bullae and other recent finds indicate a level of political organization previously thought not to exist at the time. So again, the evidence disproves the hostile people who didn't want the Bible to be true and made assumptions that evolution was true, socially and other ways. It says, our dates for the bullae are based on multiple types of evidence we combined to determine a general 10th century BC date. So that's, 1,000 years before Christ. So this is not insignificant at all. This is a significant discovery. Ancient pottery in the same context, the types of Egyptian scarabs found, the style of an Egyptian amulet, and the overall stratigraphy or layering of the site each suggested a 10th century date. So they're telling you what kinds of evidence they had. Some have seal impressions, some don't. Some were blackened by fire. Some had a hole in the middle so these things were put on a string. We're very positive that these bullae are associated with the Iron Age 2A, which we date to the 10th century BC. So lends general support to the historical veracity of David and Solomon as recorded in the Hebrew biblical text. Okay, so some text scholars and archaeologists have dismissed the historic reliability of the Bible text surrounding Kings David and Solomon, but now they can't do that anymore. So you have either political or administrative activities going on at a level well beyond those of a typical rural farmstead. So it wasn't a commune or anything like that. And I probably didn't give you the link for either of these things. So here is the link for the one I just looked at, Science News, the one for Encyclopedia Britannica on Pontius Pilate. So those are those two links. And the next claim, let's see, claims that Hebrew syntax came from Latin. That's one I hadn't been aware of that people would make. It sounds preposterous, but let's find out, right? So we go to answers.com. Did Latin originate from Hebrew? So nobody's even asking whether Hebrew came from Latin, because Hebrew long predates Latin by, if you go back to Paleo-Hebrew and Proto-Sinaitic, we're talking thousands of years. Latin did not exist and Hebrew did. So how did Hebrew get its grammar or syntax from Latin? And why are these people even making the claim? They let you fill in the blanks, as scam artists often do. And the blank they want you to fill in is that somehow Hebrew Bible could not be authentic because it was taken from a later language, from Latin, like early centuries AD, that the Old Testament came from that. This is what they're letting the listener infer, and just a little trivia here: infer and imply. Imply is what the speaker does. Infer is what the listener does. So anyway, both of them are letting somebody fill in blanks, right? So the blank, again, they want you to fill in is that the Hebrew Bible cannot be authentic because it was written after the emergence of the Latin language. And that's not true. Latin didn't even originate from Hebrew. There's no connection between the two. The two languages are unrelated. Latin developed from Italic languages spoken in Italy, that is to say Roman. Hebrew belongs to a very different family of languages. There are major branches in linguistic history. It says, I'm not sure about this. Latin has to come from somewhere. To describe Latin as having come from Italic languages spoken within Italy, presupposes there was a state called Italy at the time Latin emerged. And I think they're just quibbling over names here. There were tribal languages. Of course, that's true of a lot of languages. Hebrew belongs to a very different family of languages, only if the classification of languages is correct. So they're presenting different sides of an argument that somehow they want you to also question the classification of languages. And it's not always clear. Anybody will tell you it's not always clear. We have Indo-European languages from which English and German, English comes from German mostly. And it has all kinds of influences, of course. But so English languages are fluid and intermingling all the time. So when you're looking for origin of something, it gets murkier the farther back you go. And so anyway, this article has a different focus, but just to make the point that Latin does not predate Hebrew, so the claim in the video that Hebrew syntax came from Latin is patently false and ludicrous. So this article, like I said, is mostly trying to argue that there aren't good distinctions between these language groups. Like it says, strikingly clear that our European Roman alphabet is extremely close to the Hebrew one. I'm really not sure about that. I mean, you can see, I did a video a long time ago on the change in shapes of the letters from Proto-Sinaitic up. And so that's true. I mean, we have the Tower of Babel started with one language and was, split up into many. Of course, there are going to be similarities. But the thing is, I wouldn't call this page a scholarly source. But you won't find a scholarly source that says anything but that Hebrew predated anything close to Latin. So when somebody says Hebrew syntax comes from Latin, they really don't know what they're talking about and they didn't back it up. All right? And it's after all of that, which they've been wrong on every point, they finally, around the hour mark, get to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, one of the first Uni, good to see you, and everybody else, Journey's Wake, people homeless in America, and others I've missed, Martin. So this video, let me just, for you who just got here, try to remember where I'm at. This is the video that we're critiquing, and by the way, I need to put that link in the chat for the answers page. But basically, best answer is no, the two languages are unrelated. And remember, these are reader-contributed answers. These are not scholarly, so just to make that point. All right, so one of the claims they make about the Dead Sea Scrolls is that they were written on something called vermilion. Now, we can go, and I might just do that right here in this page, because I think I forgot to get the actually look that up for you. But vermilion, sometimes spelled the other way, is both a brilliant red or scarlet pigment, originally made from powder mineral, but let's narrow it down a little bit. Writing material, and not just the ink on it, right? So let me see if they've got. It's hard to find just for. It's just a mineral, as far as I know. All right, so, but these people are in the video are saying, let me get rid of that tab, and that one, and that one. These people are saying that the Dead Sea Scrolls were written on vermilion. But if we look at this page, let me get you the link for that. 15 surprising facts about the Dead Sea Scrolls were one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. In the 70 years since these ancient documents were found in the Qumran caves, scholars have meticulously assembled, get this, thousands of fragments into more than 900 scrolls. That takes time. Okay? And what are they written on? What were they? They were found in clay pots, etc., etc. Rumors and myths have surrounded the scrolls for decades, but over the years, scholars have gained consequential and valuable insights for these relics. There are 15 things you may be surprised to learn about the Dead Sea Scrolls. 1, oh, please get that banner out of the way. Esther is the only Old Testament book not found in the scrolls, so it has at least pieces of every one of the Hebrew canon books. Majority of the Dead Sea Scrolls are extra-biblical writings. Okay? There's thousands of fragments, 900 scrolls, but most of it is not the Bible. Okay? Nobody disputes that. But among the more than 900 scrolls are over 200 copies of the Old Testament books. Some of the books of the Bible had dozens of copies. The Qumran caves contain 39 copies of the Psalms, 33 of Deuteronomy, and 24 of Genesis. There's at least one copy of every Old Testament book except Esther. Second fact, the Hebrew Bible wasn't canonized yet. Canonization takes time. Obviously, it wasn't, the whole Bible wasn't complete then. 60% of the Dead Sea Scrolls are not included in the Tanakh or Old Testament. Okay, so again, it's not all the Bible that they discovered there in the caves. Among the copies of biblical books, there are multiple versions. These scrolls were not neatly organized or arranged according to their perceived authority. So they're just a pile. There is no indication that the community of people who possessed the scrolls saw any of them as more or less valued than the others. Does this mean other books might have been in the Bible? No, that's a separate argument, because I've done a video on canonization before, and the process that it goes through and the time it takes and the criteria by which people make decision. It comes over time, right? And yet, as I said in that video, whose title escapes, I got over 600 videos, that the conclusion was, by all evidence and witnesses, that the canon was well established of the Hebrew Bible before the time of Christ, or at that time. Okay, so anyway, scholars have suggested that this finding indicates there were multiple accepted versions of the Hebrew Bible, but most Jewish scholars argue that this finding is irrelevant because the Masoretic text still represents the official canonized Hebrew Bible. In other words, isn't it the Hebrews who decide what their sacred text is? And yet things have changed since Jesus came, and that's where the point is, that we have to be careful. I don't have a problem with the Hebrew canon before the time of Christ and the ensuing decades where Christianity was taking a hold, and that's where the real monkey business started. So anything before the Masoretic is trustworthy, in my opinion. Okay, and then, as I said, I've done a video on, that canonization process, and these, what we call the 66 books of the Old Testament. The number varies because not everyone's split up, for example, 1 Kings and 2 Kings, right? Or 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles. So the number of books is not an issue. It's the content, right? So Dr. Lawrence Schiffman, a prominent Dead Sea Scrolls scholar, says no other Bible besides the Masoretic text has any authority. Now again, we're talking about the number of books and the books that are included, but there are obfuscations and omissions in some cases in the Dead Sea and the Masoretic text, because as I've gone over about, there was a video I did that was actually drawn from one called Were the Pyramids Before or After the Flood, some title like that. And it was discovered in that video that the Masoretic text left off something like 650 years of their own history, by shaving 100 years off of the ages of some of the people in the genealogy. And this to hide prophecies fulfilled by Jesus as Messiah. So I don't trust the Masoretic text, but when it comes to the canon and what's books are in the canon, it's the same. So we don't have a problem in that regard, just to make that clear. There may be a guide to hidden treasure. One unique scroll scholars found is made of copper and a tiny bit of tin, known as the Copper Scroll, lists 64 locations, 63 of which contain items of gold and silver. The 64th is a backup copy of this treasure map. None of these treasures have been found, and scholars still debate as to whether or not they actually exist. So they're just saying unique things about the Dead Sea Scrolls here. This is not a list of all only about the Bible, okay? So supposedly there were treasure maps in here too, just to make a note of that. Most of the scrolls are about 2,000 years old, so it's still a major find no matter what. Scholars use both radiocarbon dating, which isn't bad in the thousands range, and paleographic dating, studying the artifacts and such, to estimate the age of the scrolls, and the results were similar. So they use different methods. If they come in the same neighborhood, it's fairly well established. Carbon dating on some fragments suggests they were from somewhere between 2,400 and 1,900 years old. By analyzing the writing on those same fragments, this is a big deal, using paleography, so studying ancient writings, scholars estimated that they were between about 2,200 and 1,950. So very similar results, whether carbon dating or paleography. And again, carbon dating is okay in the thousands range. Okay? Coins found in the caves also provide clues as to how long ago the scrolls were written. So you look at things that are found with other things. The newest coins in the cave were from the First Jewish-Roman War, which lasted from AD 66 to 73. So right around the time of the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. That's when these things were hidden there. Scholars used a particle accelerator to identify the ink. And again, as I've wondered in other videos, who does this for any other religious text in efforts to either support or deny it? While the naked eye could tell us that the scrolls are written in red and black ink on parchment, and this may be why the people in the video were confused about what it's written on. Maybe they meant to say, or maybe I heard wrong, that they wrote it in vermilion, which is a kind of a red toxic substance. But anyway, we're getting to what they're written on here in a minute. But here's the written with. The scrolls were written in red and black ink on parchment, not on vermilion. You don't write on vermilion. Scholars wanted to know how the ink was made. At the University of California at Davis, researchers used a cyclotron to identify the exact materials used. They learned that the black ink was carbon black, made from the soot of olive oil lamps. Nothing goes to waste. So some of the scrolls used red ink made from a mineral called cinnabar. And the scrolls, point 6, were similar to existing copies of the Old Testament. Old Testament scrolls found in Qumran have some differences from the Masoretic text. That doesn't surprise me. These are called textual variants, and most of them involve minor differences, such as the height of Goliath. The more significant variants have led scholars to question the reliability of the scrolls, but as a whole, and that is to say, the older documents are more reliable than the newer ones, which the newer ones are in the cave here. We have documents older than what was in Qumran. But as a whole, the scrolls are very similar to what Jewish people and Christians have been reading for centuries. So in all that time, nobody disputed the writings that were available, that were not hidden. Not significantly. The most common differences are changes in spelling. Many are nothing more than ancient equivalent of typos, or a single word difference in a verse. Okay, so the differences are insignificant, really. And then point 7, some of the scrolls were like ancient post-it notes. While some of the scrolls contained entire books of the Bible, others were what were called phylacteries or tefillin, tiny pieces of parchment containing verses from the Torah. Jewish men wore these verses as prescribed in the 4 passages. The Talmud explains how to wear tefillin and what they should include, etc., etc. So they had little tiny pieces of text that they put in phylacteries, little boxes and things. The Isaiah scroll was 1,000 years older than any previously discovered copy. So that's why, even though not all the material, in fact, most of the material is not about the Bible, the ones that were significant because it showed it was 1,000 years older than any documents we had to work with before. And this discovery was made in 1948, I think it was. 47, 48. So this monumental discovery was one of the first scrolls recovered. It's one of the only scrolls that was almost entirely intact, which is significant because it's about 24 feet long. This particular scroll is estimated to be about between 2350 and 2100 years old, contains all 66 chapters of Isaiah in the same order as any previously discovered manuscripts, even though it was more than 1,000 years older. So for 1,000 years, without knowing this Isaiah scroll, the Isaiah content we had was very accurate. Okay? And number 9, the scroll is written in 3 languages. More than 75% were written in Hebrew. Most of the others were written in Aramaic, and there's precious little difference between the two, depending on how you ask. A small number were also written in Greek. So again, Greek is not something Christians decided to substitute, right? One scroll refers to the Son of God, mentioned a mysterious Son of God, which you have to have a lot of context. A Son of God figure and contains an apocalyptic prophecy. The scroll is known as the Son of God text in the Aramaic Apocalypse. The scholars can't figure out whether it refers to Jesus or an enemy of God. The context is unclear, so we can't make a conclusion about it. Large section missing, so the debate will not be resolved. The longest scroll was 26.7 feet long. The temple scroll about the building of the temple in Jerusalem, so they were, at least in possession of documents about that building. One scroll tries to explain why God asked Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. We have the answer in Hebrews, where it says that Abraham believed that even if he had to kill his son, that God would raise him up again. That's the only probably reason he was willing to even try, and God stopped him from doing it anyway. Critics love to say he sacrificed his son. No, he didn't. He was going to, but God stopped him because God ordered him to do it in the first place, and God stopped him from actually going through with it and provided a sacrificial lamb that was stuck in the thicket nearby. So the whole thing is a very strong type of what Jesus would do. But this document has its own explanation, I guess. God instructs Abram to sacrifice Isaac, and the Dead Sea Scrolls say that a malevolent figure called Master Ma challenges God to test him, not unlike the way Satan challenged God to test Job in the biblical account. This seems made up, because we know from Hebrews that what the real reason was, and Hebrews predates, probably predates this scroll. So God does not originate the evil. So they were trying to say, why did God order this? But again, Hebrews explains God had a plan all along. He had a sacrificial animal waiting in the wings to see what Abraham would do. So not a significant issue. AAJM and whoever else I missed, I'm sorry. Number 13 of 15, a single cave contained 15,000 fragments from 500 scrolls. All I'll say about that one, scholars can't say for sure who wrote the scrolls. If people say, well, Enoch was in the Dead Sea Scrolls, nobody knows who wrote them. Okay? Scholars have not found any definitive record of the scroll's original keepers. So scholars have to use less definitive evidence to determine who wrote them. Most scholars can at least agree that they originated from a Jewish sect. That's the closest they can really get. Some have argued that the scrolls were the work of first-century Christians, but their case is far less compelling. There's no evidence for this. The best conjectures are a group called the Essenes. So even when people say the Essenes were this magnificent community of true Christians who wrote the true Bible, they're making stuff up. It's a conjecture that the Essenes did it. Possibly the Sadducees, who didn't even believe in an afterlife, which, as the old Christian pun goes, that's why they're sad, you see. Because this is why they asked Jesus, why they came to test him, and said that, there's this woman who was married and her husband died before they had children, and by Hebrew law she had to marry his brother, and she went through 7 brothers, and then finally she died. So who's in the afterlife, whose wife would she be? And Jesus said, you don't know what you're talking about. Not only isn't there marriage in heaven, that's not a thing in heaven, but you don't know the power of God. And what he meant by that is these people didn't believe in an afterlife. So that's, a little background or backstory on that. But But it could be the Essenes or the Sadducees who wrote down the scrolls or kept the scrolls. There's enough evidence for both that we can't say which one it was, if it was just one. So there's enough doubt about the authorship of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but the significant fact is that the Isaiah scroll, the one that was intact, is corroborated by a lot more other documents that we had in the meantime. In point 15, the scrolls written on goat and calf hides are more significant. Okay, so if the video, and whether I misheard, I didn't go back and watch it twice, whether they actually said it was written on vermilion, I hope they said in or by or with. But what they were written on, they already went over the ink. Using DNA testing, scholars determined that the parchment used for most of the scrolls were made from animal hides, such as goat, calf, ibex, or ibex, or gazelle. So they were written on animal hides. Not all of them, but the best ones. After analyzing hundreds of scrolls, some scholars believe there is a correlation between the importance of the scroll and the religious significance of the type of animal hide on which it was written. Goats and cows were traditionally considered more pure, and scrolls written on these hides appear to be more important. So if they had something really important to write, it's just like if you had an important legal document, you wouldn't put it on average copy paper, right? You wouldn't get, tear some pages out of a notebook and write on that. So there's pulp paper that we, just made from scrap, basically, if you know anything about paper making. But if you had something important, you would use vellum or something really high quality. And so they did the same thing in ancient times, and they would write on clean animals for the more important papers, so goats and calves. More to the story, you can read about that if you want, but we still got a fair amount of time left, but I want to cover the rest of the things. So as far as what it's written by or on, there you have it. Now to the point of the whole thing is that they, again, lead you to fill in the blanks, is that all of the Dead Sea Scrolls were forgeries. Okay? That's the claim they seem to be making. But, let me get you another link from history.com. And let me roll up here a bit little so you can get the title. 6 Things You May Not Know About the Dead Sea Scrolls. From their ancient discovery to their sale in the classifieds. Okay? So now we're going to get into the controversies about the scrolls. In late 1946 or 47, Bedouin teenagers, I was a little year off, tending goats and sheep located on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea, the West Bank. One of them tossed a rock into the opening in the cliff, heard a shattering sound, checked it out, found large clay jars, 7 of which contained leather and papyrus scrolls. And the leather would be animal skin, of course. Antiquities dealer bought the cash, which ultimately ended up in the hands of various scholars who estimated the texts were upwards of 2,000 years old. So that was their first guess, and it turned out to be fairly accurate just from examining the papers, or, we call them papers, but the text. After word got out, the treasure hunters and archaeologists unearthed tens of thousands of additional scroll fragments from 10 nearby caves. Together they make up 800 to 900 manuscripts. So, again, interesting facts about them. Some of the scrolls were sold in the classifieds. This is the important thing here about the video that we're critiquing here, right? They lead you to believe, in my opinion, that this is about all the Dead Sea Scrolls, but it's not. Athanasius Yeshua Samuel, a Syrian Orthodox Archbishop of Jerusalem, bought 4 of the original Dead Sea Scrolls from a cobbler who dabbled in antiquities, paying less than $100 when the Arab-Israeli War broke out in 1948. Samuel traveled to the United States and unsuccessfully offered them to a number of universities, including Yale. Finally, in 1954, he placed an ad in the Wall Street Journal, miscellaneous items for sale, that read biblical manuscripts dating back to at least 2000 BC. Israeli archaeologist Yadin, whose father had obtained the other 3 scrolls, secretly negotiated their purchase on behalf of the newly established state of Israel. Unfortunately for Samuel, much of the $250,000 he received went to the U.S. Internal Revenue Service, since the bill of sale had not been properly drawn up. What a robbery. This is what the Internal Revenue Service does. They rob you, they skim every transaction. It's the mob, the muscle of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. But enough about them. The fact is that they stole $250,000 from this guy. All right. Number 3, nobody knows for sure who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. It goes along with that other link. The origin of the scrolls, written between 150 and BC and 70 AD. So again, 70 AD is when Jerusalem fell, so they hid them. Remains a subject of debate. According to the prevailing theory, they're work of a Jewish population that inhabited Qumran until Roman troops destroyed the settlement around 70 AD. So this all is what everybody seems to agree on. The Jews are thought to have belonged to a devout, ascetic, and communal sect called the Essenes, but not everybody agrees with that. It could have been the Sadducees, like I said earlier, one of 4 distinct Jewish groups living in Judea before and during the Roman era. Proponents of this hypothesis note similarities between the traditions outlined in Community Rule, a scroll, where they give the rules of their community, and Roman historian Flavius Josephus' description of the Essene rituals. So they're making that connection on the basis primarily of Josephus. But archaeological evidence from Qumran, including the ruins of Jewish ritual baths, also suggests the site was once home to observant Jews. That's about the one thing everybody can agree on. So it wasn't a Christian community at all. It wasn't a Christian sect. So when people say the Essenes were the original Christians, they don't know what they're talking about. Some scholars have credited other groups with producing the scrolls, including early Christians and Jews from Jerusalem who passed through there while they were running from the Romans. Almost all the Bible is represented, as we've said before. Everything but Esther. Some have probably disintegrated over time or yet to be uncovered. Others propose that Esther was not part of the Essenes canon, or that the sect did not celebrate Purim, the festival holiday based on the book. The only complete book of the Hebrew Bible preserved in Qumran is Isaiah, as we said before. The earliest Old Testament manuscript still in existence. Along with biblical texts, scrolls include documents about sectarian regulations. Hebrew not the only language, we've gone over that. Include a guide to hidden treasure, gone over that. So not a lot new in here. But this is about the ad, the classified ad, and a little bit more background on that. But notice that there's no scholarly source saying that all the Dead Sea Scrolls were fake. Only some were presented to a particular museum. What this article doesn't go into as much. Let me see if it's on the last one. No, that's where you can read the whole thing now if you want. Let me get you this link. And so, let's see, as far as the claim that the Dead Sea Scrolls have been kept secret to hide their being fake, and again, this is something that they're letting you in the video fill in the blanks. The claim that they've been kept secret to hide the fact that they're fake is preposterous because of the screen I got up here now. You can read the whole thing. Nobody kept it secret. Again, thousands of fragments, 900 scrolls, takes time to analyze. You have to collect it all, put the puzzle pieces together, make sure that you've got as much of it as possible, document it, catalog it, and that takes a lot of people a lot of time. So nobody was hiding anything. The claim that they were is the one that needs to be backed. If you make the claim that there's some skullduggery going on and people are, trying to promote the Dead Sea Scrolls when they're fake, you require evidence to support your accusations. So fakes also are typically rushed. If you know anything about forgeries, there's usually done on at a moment in time because of something somebody wants to accomplish. For example, Piltdown Man, that we all learned about in school, was a complete fake. There were other things such as Haeckel's, what he called, something capitulation. Anyway, he had those series of little, embryos developing that he said went through all the animal stages of evolution, right? And it was total hogwash. He made things up. He doctored the photos. He did all sorts of things because people want to make a name for themselves. And so they discover things and make them look antique, and then eventually, after everybody has gone hog wild about it, then they discovered, oops, this was a forgery. And there are some college textbooks, even in recent times, that still have Haeckel's drawings and Piltdown Man as scientific facts, and they're absolutely debunked. So, the fact that you can go to this site and read the Dead Sea Scrolls yourself means nobody was hiding anything, and nobody got rich, obviously, except the Infernal Revenue Service. They're the ones who got rich off of this. So, motive and all that sort of thing, yes, there was one incident where I think it was involved the Hobby Lobby chain of stores that, for whatever reason, they're a hobby store. They decided that they had their hands on authentic Dead Sea Scrolls, and they displayed them, and then it found out it was fake. Ought to be a lesson in there somewhere for Hobby Lobby, but turned out to be fake. There are forgeries of real things because people want, and they know that Christians especially want authentic Dead Sea Scroll stuff, and any kind of ancient artifacts. And so Christians sometimes, like anybody else who's got a vested interest in something, can be easy prey for hucksters. But the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves are well established, examined, kept in a real museum, and we can all read what they had to say. And once they put that out, there's no changing it after that because, too many eyes are on it. So it just takes a while to assemble 900 scrolls, thousands of fragments. And if you're a forger with the original, the original discovery, you also remember that little backstory I gave that different sources had different pieces, different people had different pieces of this discovery. And they were eventually collected. Okay, but that's not how, that's not a forgery. Now, the guys in the video are presenting stuff to you that may or may not be authentic because who has examined them? In fact, I couldn't find any objective supporting documentation for these two guys or their research. Harry and Paul Hubbard. Okay? Dressed very casually, small room, bad quality video, and nothing but a collection of things that you can't go and examine. I can't find any analysis of their claims, good or bad. I mean, it'd be one thing to find people saying, yeah, this is the real deal, I checked it myself, but you also have to have hostile witnesses. You have to have people saying, I didn't want this to be true, but it is. Can't find anything either way. Okay? So, everybody loves earth-shattering discoveries, but few people love the hard work of testing and vetting, and that's what we have to do if we're going to make claims, and we have to be careful not to spread things without knowing that they're true. And especially as Christians, we need to be very careful about that, okay? So, that gets into kind of segs, not Segway. Segway is an Apple computing product. Seg is a transition, okay? Transition in Christians' gullibility sometimes because of what we want to be true. Okay, so we have to be objective as much as possible. That's impossible to ever be completely objective, but that's why you need hostile witnesses. Why I keep harping about hostile witnesses. Because you need people who want to find the opposite to be true, and both of you to examine evidence and then see what you get. And this is how we get into any kind of disagreement theologically. We have the same Bible to look at. If we're looking at original languages, translations can lead you astray, but you can minimize that by getting translations from different denominations, different committees, different individuals, and cross-check them. That's why I started with Proverbs 18:17. You have to cross-check. And think of it as if you were on trial, accused of a crime, how thorough would you want both attorneys, prosecutor and defense, to be? You want them to be thorough. That's the whole point of a court trial, is to have two people with opposite goals going over the same evidence, interrogating the same witnesses, And if you're innocent, you want that done really well. You don't want a mistrial. You don't want anybody to just listen to one side and the other and then decide a verdict. So we should be all the more diligent putting ourselves in the situation with the Bible to say any claims made about it, good or bad, need to be supported. That's really important. And that's really the message I wanted to get across by even looking at this. This was the person who gave me this link he's called Old Haas. He's in the chat sometimes and some of the other chats. He told me about this video and wondered what I thought about it. So hopefully, I don't know if he's here or if you see him, tell him I did a video on it. But this is just another lesson in discernment and being careful, not rushing to judgment, good or bad, and not just believing what people tell you. Check it out if you can, as much as you can. So whatever the topic, whether it's biblical or not topic, anything in life, you can't go wrong with that approach. It's important to check out things that you think are true and find good reasons whether they're true or not. Okay? Anybody know what Andrew typed there in apparently... Oh, okay. Okay, it took a while for my eyes to adjust. Rugen adverb, at to a great distance from ground level. Okay, they're talking about sea level or something. All right. Or hug or chug. I've seen it written or pronounced each way. The video I did a few days ago on biblical cosmology, I went into that and the difference between that and dur, D-U-R, or something like that, where the dur is something you throw. And the Greek equivalent of that is balo, which is where we get our word ball, is from something throwable, whereas the circle of the earth is chug or hug, which is a compass, a line around, or digging a trench around a tree or something like that, a flat circle. Anyway. Yeah, doing your homework. Let's see. Anyway, that's all I have on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Or if there are any questions real quick, I want to wind this down because once again I'm on my 4th round of antibiotics for this abscessed molar on my lower left side, which, if you want a little history, many years ago, decades ago, I had this horrendous pain in my jaw. I didn't know where it was coming from because I couldn't tell my teeth, teeth didn't seem to look bad or feel bad. It was all up in my jaw joint, and it wasn't until I went to the ER finally, I couldn't stand the pain anymore, and they suggested going to a dentist because, what else? They didn't know what else was causing it, and turned out it was a badly abscessed tooth, and they did a root canal, but apparently I've found out in recent months that it wasn't sealed properly, so it got reinfected recently, and the pain just wasn't going away, so they put me on the same antibiotic the second time, and then it was okay for a while. For a little bit, for a few days after I finished I was almost finished with the second antibiotic. They put me on a different one to see if that would work. It was okay for a few weeks, and then now it started hurting again, so I'm back on antibiotics. I hate it. But supposedly on the 9th, I'm going to get the root canal finished. And dental insurance is crappy. It only pays for nothing major. You get $1,200 a year. Nothing major. That's not a drop in the bucket. But anyway, not too bad at the moment. I just try not to chew anything very hard. But next week, I'm going to be very busy. I may or may not have, I should have internet access again, but things are going to be moved around, and so I won't be able to do a live stream. But I will try to schedule a premiere, which, if you don't know, it'll just be on YouTube, because YouTube has, I know the other ones, Twitch and DLive are also working on ways to do something like premieres, but it's basically a pre-done video that allows you to have a live chat when it runs the first time. That's why it's a premiere. So I don't know what I'm going to put up yet. I have to think of something in the next few days and schedule it for next Sunday at this time. So you will have a live chat to go to. I don't know if I'll be in the live chat or not, but I will not be speaking live. It will not be a live stream. It will be a premiere. Just a heads up for that next week. I don't know if I'll run anything this week because, like I said, I'm going to be busy next couple of, this week and next. So that's what's coming, and I don't really have time for a lot of questions on because, like I said, it's time for me to take my meds again. But let me just try to shout out some more people. Let's see, I didn't think I did Piachin, Rachel Menifee, Homeless in America, I know I mentioned you, Neo the One, Journey's Wake, I think I mentioned you, Unicorn Laser Eyes, Jellyman, and Martin, I know I'm pretty sure I mentioned you, and AJM, Dutch Sailor, Andrew, and that's it. I think I've caught up with everybody. Anyway, yeah, there would be a video I put up before. I'll just put it up again. Hopefully something that's at least an hour long so you can hang out for an hour. Hey, Billy. Yeah, I'm just shutting down. Isn't that how it goes? You get a phone call. But you can replay it. No problem. Hey, I'm Lou. Yep, I'm going to shut down because I have to. Like I said, I got to take my meds. So, all right. May or may not see you next week in the chat, but I will have something to run. Hopefully that'll go without a hitch. It won't, I won't be using OBS. It's just going to be YouTube, so should work. Let's just hope for that. All right. If you have anything you want to vote for as an older video to run again, put it in the comments under this video, which you can do at any time, I think. So I kept thinking of one I did a long time ago called Waterworld. That was interesting research then too. I might put up Waterworld. But also we know the world in general, speaking of world, is in really bad shape with all the things going on in the Middle East and the world burning to a crisp any ounce of freedom of conscience, freedom of movement. But you can't say too much or they shut you down. But don't get hit by any poison darts, if you know what I mean. By the way, there's a guy called J.D. Farag, F-A-R-A-G, has a website. If you go there, you can get some forms that may help you with the poison dart situation. Okay? And thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I like strawberries too. I eat strawberry yogurt. I always eat yogurt, extra yogurt when I'm on antibiotics and that sort of thing. But I have to time it between doses because you don't want pro and antibiotics in your stomach at the same time. All right, so I might do Waterworld, but like I said, if you have other ideas, we'll see. But anyway, so yeah, go to JD Farag. Let me type that. I don't have the exact website address right now, but don't go to .com. Maybe I'll get that for you anyway, because if you go to .com, you won't get that. You'll get a spam site. So here we go. Let me get you this link. Go there, and you'll see there's a menu, and oh, look at that one. Here, I'll get you that link too. Okay? And now I will shut down, because you know how people are. So anyway, Dead Sea Scrolls and other things, and maybe we'll do Waterworld premiere next week. Thanks everybody for coming, and see you then.